Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are a little more than midway through the 2047 season, and it's been an excellent year for the Pirates so far. 57-30 record, the best record in baseball. 7 games up in the division on the Brewers, who are tied for the second best record in baseball. So hopefully we will get a division title this year. Hopefully we will have home field advantage throughout the playoffs as we try to get this Pirates team over the hump. We have made the playoffs in 7 of our 9 years as general manager of the Pirates, but we've never gotten farther than the National League Championship Series, and we've only made it that far twice. So would still obviously like to win a world championship with this team, and a little more than midway through the season, I think we're pretty well positioned to do that. You can see we've got the best offense in the National League, first in runs scored, second best pitching staff in the National League, tied for second actually in runs allowed. I've had a winning record every month with great months in April and June, and the team is in really good shape right now. One injury that we're dealing with at this point, Yoshitaro Nakahara, the veteran left fielder, left-handed bat who we picked up on a 1-year, $2.6 million deal, is out for an unknown period of time with a strained PCL. Honestly, we're hitting so well and playing so well that we're going to give him as much time as he needs to hopefully recover from that. He has been really good for us, 274 batting average and 14 home runs in 197 at-bats. So he has certainly been as good as expected, putting up a 146 OPS plus and a 147 WRC plus for us. But we do have a lot of good young outfielders, most notably Calez and Joel Fields, who are getting more playing time with Nakahara on the IL. So certainly hope that he'll be back for the playoffs and the push for the playoffs, because we want to make sure that we win the division and get a first round bye this year, and he could certainly help us do that, but don't feel that we have to push things with him either. Did make an offer earlier today to Jonathan Merrican, who's the best international amateur free agent prospect out there that we can find. Not even 16 years old yet, good personality. Looks like he could have a pretty good bat if he fully develops. So we made an offer to him. Don't think he'll be a shortstop for the long term, but hopefully we can get lucky and get the best guy out there signed. And as we've been steadily increasing ticket prices despite our declining fan interest, we're still selling out most games. So we're going to bop it up another notch to $28 at this point. Goal is to ultimately maximize revenue per game, obviously, but like to be pretty slow and methodical in how we do it. So moving slowly in terms of increasing those ticket prices, but hopefully with the great performance we've had on the field so far this year, and pretty strong fan interest, even though it has been moving in the wrong direction recently, we'll continue to sell out most games. And good news in that Jonathan Merrican, who we thought was the best prospect out there by far, has joined our minor league organization. So he's over in the international complex now. Given that he's not yet 16 years old, probably going to be a few years till we move him to the DSL team. But good to have another good prospect on board in our system. And with the 60-33 record that we have right now, would expect that we're going to have a lot of players on the All-Star team, but we'll find out. Pitching staff, Sean Street, 11-3 with a 4.29 ERA, 116 strikeouts, makes the team as a starter. And Greg Gaylord, our excellent reliever, 4-0 with 23 saves and a stupid 0.22 ERA, 49 strikeouts and 40 2/3 innings, make the All-Star team as pitchers. Our new catcher, Andres Coronel, who we traded, made that big trade with the Cubs for, hitting 286 with 5 home runs. He is named to the All-Star team. Our new first baseman, who we traded for this past offseason, Lupe Zelaya, hitting 311, 24 homers, 68 runs driven in. He is a starter, and clearly happy to have him on board because he's done everything we could have hoped at this point in terms of his production for us this year. And it looks like that is it. So 4 All-Stars for the Pirates, Zelaya and Coronel at first base and catcher, and Gaylord is our closer, and of course Sean Street is a starter. And as we get ready for the amateur draft, longtime starter Bobby Gonzalez checking in with us again about an extension. Ownership does want us to extend him. He's 37 years old now, kind of trending in the wrong direction. You can see his ERA has climbed from 307 to 398 to 461 over the last 3 years. Although his Sierras have been pretty consistent. He's looking for a little over $6 million a year for 4 years, which is a pretty long contract for a 37-year-old. And I do also worry, given that his sinker and his slider are not that great anymore. He's got that fantastic changeup, but he's really a 2-pitch pitcher with that great changeup and the curveball. He's obviously still been effective as a starter, even though his sinker and his slider aren't great. But I do worry he could get even less effective going forward and kind of become a pretty expensive bullpen arm. He is an Iron Man, so it's definitely something for us to consider, but don't feel like I need to make a decision on that quite yet. And as has become our custom, we'll be picking pretty late in the first round, 29th pick overall for the Pirates. Doesn't look like it's an incredibly deep draft in terms of the frontline talent. Hopefully we can get a pretty good player with our first pick, but I'm guessing by the second round it's probably going to be someone that we're not all that excited to bring on board. And we got a few players who stand out, at least in terms of the star ratings. As far as position players we could look at, one is first baseman Jose Rucker. Looks like he's got a pretty good contact and power bat potentially. Not looking for a lot of money either, which is also attractive. He's not great defensively, doesn't have a lot of speed, but certainly looks like he could be a pretty productive offensive player at the major league level. Catcher Alexis Kinjo, 22-year-old out of the University of Houston, pretty decent glove. Looks like he could be a pretty good hitter for a catcher. Not a ton of speed, not surprisingly. Decent player. Not all that exciting, though. Ricky Medina, shortstop. Probably more naturally a third baseman in terms of his ratings on a good team. Doesn't look like he's going to have the greatest bat in the world, although he will walk a lot. Again, he's a fine prospect, but I'm not going to be falling all over myself to draft him in the first round. And then Angel Ruiz, another third baseman, like the work ethic, like the arm. Looks like he could have a okay bat. So he's out of Clemson, college player. So none of the position players are all that exciting to me. Not that I won't end up picking one of them. But we'll take a look at the pitchers now and see if maybe there's some more interesting options on the mound for us. So Juan Munoz, starting pitcher, 18-year-old. Potentially is really nice stuff and good movement, decent control. Issue is that changeup doesn't develop. He's a reliever. And even if that changeup does develop, I mean, as we saw with Bobby Gonzalez, you can get by with a third pitch that's a 40 or 45 kind of pitch if your other pitches are really good. But no guarantees that that changeup is going to develop, so it would be a little ambitious, I think, to grab him in the first round. Ignacio de Los Angeles. Definitely a reliever. Not all that exciting. Hyun-Woo Kim, 19-year-old. Definitely has more of a starter's profile, like the durability. Looking for a ton of money. Not the greatest personality in the world. Probably will pass on him also. Omar Puga, another reliever. Not a great personality. John Sands. Could be a starter. Potentially his real nasty stuff. Actually, he can't really be a starter. He's got the 3 pitches, but his stamina is pretty low. He could be a starter, but he'd be a 4 or 5 inning kind of guy, which these days isn't necessarily horrible. But really probably more of a reliever. Sean Smith, don't love the personality. Looks like he's a 2-pitch pitcher. Pass. And Juan Zelaya, another reliever. So even here at the end of the first round, don't necessarily love any of these prospects. Going to spend a little more time on these guys and then also do some of the kind of normal searches, seeing if there's anyone who stands out in terms of their potential and their ratings that we haven't necessarily noticed yet. You can see there's no real pitchers who are going to become hitters this year who are still showing up in the draft. Tristan Jones, the left fielder, though, looks like a decent mix of contact and power. We already talked about Jose Rucker. Lupe Gonzalez, not a bad combination, although not the best eye in the world. So there's definitely some players for us to think about. And I don't really love any of the prospects this year. Kind of just searching on contact potential to see some players who could be big-time hitters who also may have a little bit of power. Few guys that we're kind of zeroing in on. Center fielder Juan Correa, coming out of UVA. Solid defensively, has a little bit of speed. Looks like he could be a decent contact hitter, hit for some extra bases. Decent prospect. Not incredibly exciting. Omar Cedillo, another center fielder. Like the good work ethic. Again, decent defensively. Not a ton of home run power, but looks like he'll be able to have a few extra base hits. Another guy, Alex Shakhensevev. Alex Shaksevev. Another center fielder, another guy who looks like he would definitely be pretty good at knocking out some doubles and triples with that speed and that good gap power. Like the fact that he's durable, high school prospect, pretty respectable defensively. Think he's an interesting prospect for us. And then Jose Rucker, who we've already talked about, the first baseman, certainly looks like probably the best combination of contact and home run power. Never going to be all that effective of a defensive player, but if he really ends up with 70 contact and 65 home run power, we'll play him at first if we have to, or put him in the DH hole. Lupe Gonzalez, only thing I really don't like around him is just a horrible eye. Not a lot of speed, not that great defensively, but certainly looks like a potentially interesting bat. Brandon Salter has a somewhat similar profile. Again, just a bad eye, a little bit more speed, a little bit better defensively, and he is durable. Issue with him is his signability is looked at as impossible. Or I think I would actually seriously think about bringing him on board. But I think I'm going to end up going with Jose Rucker. I just think in terms of contact and home run power, he's got the best bat of anyone in this class, or the most upside. So we're going to go ahead and pick Rucker 29th overall and see who's still available with our next pick. And Lupe Gonzalez still is, unfortunately. That might be a direction for us to go now. Salter is too, a little bit surprisingly. But he's impossible to sign. But Lupe Gonzalez, certainly somebody to think about. Don't love the bad eye. And I think I'd also think about Alex Shaksev. I think I would think about him too. Let's see what the scouting director recommends. He recommends Juan Munoz, this pitcher, who is still around here in the second round. That's interesting. I didn't love him because I thought he was, wow, look at that. Look at Mets with 4 compensatory picks in a row here in the second round. Crazy. I did not love him as a first round player because I think he probably is ultimately a reliever unless he gets real lucky. But for the end of the second round, if that changeup does develop, he is a pretty interesting pitching prospect. So I got some decisions to make here in the second round. In a weird way, I almost kind of like the options here in the second round better than the first round, just because I feel like I'm getting better value on whoever we end up with. And I am really intrigued by Juan Munoz, but those changeups can be hard to develop. And if it doesn't develop, he's a reliever. He's got borderline-ish stamina for a starter anyways. I mean, he could be a 5 or 6 inning guy. Also not incredible at holding on runners. Doesn't throw all that hard. If he's still around in the third round, I would think about him, but he's not. We're not going to take him. I think we're going to go with another bat, which is definitely unlike me, but you got to go where you think the value is. So here in the second round, I think the kind of 3 guys that we're honing in on are Shaksev. Like the fact that he's switch hitter, high school player who's not even 18 yet, durable, has the speed to leg out some extra base hits with that good gap power. Pretty versatile defensively. You could put him any spot in the outfield and he'd be respectable defensively for you. So he's in the mix. Lupe Gonzalez, the left fielder, like him also. Not that great defensively, not a lot of speed. Pretty bad eye, quite honestly. But everything else about him is potentially above average as far as his offensive profile. And then Brandon Salter, left fielder. Issue with him is just that the signability is impossible. Or I think I would take him, but we know that he's not going to sign with us. So I don't think there's any point in pushing it. I think we're going to go with Shaksev, which could mean that you're going to hear me mispronouncing his name for the next 20 seasons potentially. But I like the durability. I like the fact that he's got some speed, although he's not a great base runner or base stealer. Still should be able to leg out some extra base hits, decent home run power. Looks like he could be a pretty useful outfielder for us down the line. So we are going to go with Shaksev here in the second round. Moving on to the third. Salter, of course, is still out there, given that he's an impossible signee. Who does scouting director recommend? John Sayans, the reliever we talked about back in the first round. We're getting to the point in the draft where we could take a reliever. Would like to probably, in a perfect world, wait until the 4th or 5th or 6th round rather than the 3rd round, but he's definitely somebody that we could think about taking here in the 3rd. And here in the third round, I'm actually tempted to go with the starting pitcher, Jameer Ford, high school player, durable, really good personality. Not the most impressive stuff in the world, but still could potentially have a 3 to 4 pitch arsenal with really good movement, acceptable control. The issue with him is he's looking for $2.2 million, which for a third round pick, given the fact that we've got very little excess money in our budget right now, and we've already spent a full $5 million on an international amateur free agent. I don't think we can sign him. I don't think we're going to have enough money. So unfortunately, we're going to not push the envelope with Ford. And I think we are actually going to go with the reliever, John Sayans, in the third round here. Lefty, really nasty stuff potentially. He's a reliever in the third round. For a reliever seems like a little bit of a stretch, but as I mentioned at the start, it didn't seem like this was the deepest draft in the world, and I think that that's proven to be pretty accurate. So we're going to go with a reliever here in the third round. We'll offer him his bonus demand, which is below slot, and it's probably going to be about it for what I walk through on this episode. If I see anyone interesting over the next 17 rounds of the draft, we'll let you know. And as we finish up the draft and coming out of the All-Star break, Nakahara finally healthy and ready to come off of the IL. I think that means that Joel Fields goes back down to AAA. He, as we talked about in our last episode, is kind of starting to look like a 4A kind of player. He's hit over 300 each of the last 2 years and 295 a couple of seasons ago in his stints in AAA. But he has hit 260, 224, and now $1.19 in his cups of coffee with the Pirates. So we will send Fields back down to AAA and bring Nakahara back onto the 26-man roster. And as we get closer to the end of the month of July and the trade deadline, you can see we went on a really nice run, winning 8 in a row after the All-Star break before finally losing to Colorado yesterday, 8-0 to break that long winning streak. But we're obviously in a very good position right now. 68-34, best record in baseball, up 9 on the Brewers, who have also actually been playing really well. Can see, looking at the league leaders, Lupe Zelaya, the new addition, hitting .316. Julio Castillo, the rookie infielder, tied for the league lead with 81 runs batted in. Zelaya leading the league in OPS. Zelaya third in batter WAR. Luis Longoria second in ERA, 10-4 with 151 strikeouts and a 2.83 ERA. A little surprising he didn't make the All-Star team. Sean Street third in wins. He did make the All-Star team. And Longoria now is third in pitcher WAR. So definitely a surprise that with the season Longoria is having, he didn't end up making the All-Star team. Hopefully we can keep this fragile pitcher healthy over the last few months of the season and into the playoffs. Going to be a excuse me. Going to be a free agent after this season, so probably pitching his final months with the Pirates at this point, but he's been a really good pitcher for us over the years, and we've kind of kept him healthy with a pitch count and hope to continue to do the same over the rest of this season and into the playoffs. And with the team continuing to play really well, although fan interest does continue to decay a bit, we're going to bump the ticket prices up again another notch, continue trying to push revenue as much as we possibly can with this team. Taking a look at team stats as we get near the end of the month in the trade deadline. We've slipped to second in runs scored, but we're now first in runs allowed. Taking a look at the pitching staff, don't see a lot that we can do with our starters. They're all really good pitchers, and they're all performing pretty well this year. And our bullpen, also doing pretty well. The youngster Devin Smith hasn't had a ton of action since we finally called him up. Pitched just 5 games for us, but hasn't allowed a run yet. And he's obviously a guy who could slot into the rotation if we have some injuries. Not that we're hopefully tempting fate by talking about that, but don't really see anything that we would want to do with our pitching staff except maybe add another left-handed arm out of the bullpen, or a better left-handed arm out of the bullpen. And I don't really see a ton that we're going to want to do with our everyday players either. Coronel was an all-star. Rodriguez is an okay backup, although he's been our least productive player in terms of WAR this year. With Zelaya, Castillo, Guzman, and Castillo, Linares, and Rivera, all of those guys and David Green are starting somewhere in the infield against lefties or righties. And then the outfield with Arellano, Nakahara, Ruacho, and Kelez getting pretty consistent playing time. The former number 1 overall pick, Henry Gonzalez, is now kind of a fifth outfielder for us, and he's not playing well in that role, hitting just a .198 with 6 home runs and 177 at-bats. If we could add a great bat, obviously would consider doing it. We don't have a ton of money to bring on free agents, but going to take a look at who's on the trade block at this point, and if we can get somebody cheap who we think can help us, we'll certainly do it. But the way this team is playing and the way this team is constructed, I don't see a ton of obvious holes that we need to try to fill right now. Main thing is that we just stay healthy the rest of the way and into the playoffs, and that's a crapshoot. We don't have control over that. In taking a look at the batters who are available on the trade block, I don't see any obvious guys that would improve us a ton. Tony Carrion's a decent bat, got some speed, decent fielder, but he's making a lot of money, and I don't see that he's a huge upgrade to what we have. So I don't think we're going to do anything on that front. Pitchers, there's some higher-end guys available, including closer Jose Calderon, who would be that left-handed arm that we were just talking about. Don't know whether we'll be able to bring him on board from the Astros, but that would certainly be a interesting arm out of our bullpen, who's pretty effective against everybody, but even more effective against left-handed batters. I don't know. I mean, we're going to have the Astros retain most of his contract to make it work, and they might also be looking for a lot for him. Where are they in the standings? They're 46 and 56, so they're out of it. So maybe they'll be inclined to move on from him. If we can get him for a cheap price, it would be a higher-end left-handed arm out of the bullpen, which wouldn't be the worst thing for us. And we can pick up Calderon and get them to retain all of his contract, as well as even get a little cash in return. We have to send Jose De Leon, who was a scouting discovery of ours about 3 years ago. Very good defensive outfielder, but question whether he's going to really hit enough to be an everyday player in the majors. Really, he's probably a fifth outfielder with a left-handed bat who can play pretty good defensively anywhere for you. But to upgrade our team as we try to hopefully make a long playoff run and hopefully win the World Series this year, I think bringing on a pitcher like Calderon makes a lot of sense. lefty pitcher over the course of his career, 138 ERA plus, a 71 FIP minus. He's been a pretty dynamic pitcher over the course of his career, and adding him into our bullpen I think will definitely help us. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade. And fans were actually excited that we brought on Calderon too. So got a nice bump in fan interest. So we'll bump the ticket prices another notch up to $30 there. See if we can continue to generate some extra revenues. So that was an unexpected boost. Clearly we'll be taking a hit when he loses after this year, when he leaves after this year. I think looking at our pitching staff, we are actually going to send our lefty specialist, Danny Robles, who's been a solid pitcher for us for the last several seasons since we picked him up. He's been a nice left-handed arm out of the pen, and he's a guy who theoretically could start if we ever needed him to. But he does have one option year left, and I'd rather continue to see what Devin Smith, the more dynamic youngster, can do at the major league level. Presumably we'll bring Robles back when we get to September now, although he will, I guess, be fighting for that opportunity now with Chris Colvin, who we had to send down when we brought up the youngster, who also pitched well. So it's a little bit of an embarrassment of riches in terms of our pitching right now, but feel like that gives us... he refuses to be demoted. Probably not shocking, given that he's pretty an established major leaguer at this point. I guess the question is, we send Devin Smith back down. It's pretty hard to do after the guy had a 3.27 ERA in AAA, and he hasn't allowed a run in 6 1/3 innings in the major league level. Number 37 prospect in baseball. But that would be the path of least resistance. And then we'd still have him up in September in just over a month again. And the middle reliever, Bobby Astorga, also does have option years left, so we'll see whether maybe we can demote him. We can send him down to AAA, so that'll open up a spot on the roster for Calderon. Very well could mean that he takes over that closer role from Greg Gaylord. Greg Gaylord just goes out and does a incredible job for us every season since we've picked him up. Sometimes he's our closer, sometimes he's not, but just kind of fills in his role. He's an Iron Man, not making a ton of money. And we've got that team option on him next year at this point. But I'm thinking he may lose the closer role to Mr. Calderon. And he does. Which is fine. Calderon's definitely a dynamic pitcher. Gives us, as I said, another lefty out of the pen, although in the closer role, he's not going to be matching up as much as we might have hoped to with him as a lefty specialist, but gives us a little more flexibility, gives us another big-time arm. We're trying to make a run this year, and I think we're better with Calderon than we were before we had him, and that's really all that matters. And as we get closer to the trade deadline in the end of July, you can see Milwaukee is now only 6 games behind us. The 2 best records in baseball are in our division. Going to go nuts if they somehow get past us again and we end up with the 2nd best record in baseball in a wild card series. They've won 5 in a row. They're obviously playing really well. I don't think there's anyone that really improves us that much on the trade market, though, in terms of our offense or our pitching. They're both still really good. 2nd in the league in runs scored, 2nd in the league in runs allowed. Great combination. You know, we're still playing 600 ball here in the month of July so far. If we have some big injury the next couple days, maybe we need to do something. But otherwise, I think I think we're going to hold tight with the players we've got. We like our team a lot. And we've simmed ahead a couple days to the trade deadline. Milwaukee continues to win. We lost against Atlanta yesterday, so we're now only at 4.5 games on them. But I don't think we should panic or do. I don't know that there's anyone out there that's like so great that we have to get them anyways. But when I look at the standings, our run differential is twice as good as the Brewers. We're 2 games better than our Pythagorean record, but they're 5 games better than their Pythagorean record. Doesn't mean that they can't catch us, but we have by far the best run differential in the National League. We're more than twice as good as anybody else. The Braves at plus 63 are the second best team. And even going over to the American League, the Rangers are plus 99, the Royals plus 75. But we are the best team in baseball, and we've just added a big-time reliever onto our team. I don't think there's any other obvious moves for us to make. We'll take a quick look again. I can't imagine there's anything all that significantly different out on the trade block at this point. Doesn't appear to be as far as the batters. I'm kind of content with what we have. There's always a chance of a major injury that disrupts our season, but I like our team. I like our roster. We're going to run with who's brung us this far. And we did get a 10-3 win yesterday against the Braves to finish off the month of July. Brewers finally lost a game, so we are 5.5 up on the Brewers for the NL Central. We are 5.5 up on the Brewers for the best record in the National League and the best record in baseball. So that will be our goal in our next episode when we cover August and September, to see if we can hang on to the best record in baseball, hang on to home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and most importantly, stay healthy and see if we can finally have this Pirates team positioned for a very long postseason run. And we'll find out how we do with that in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.